a shocking verdict for Amanda Knox.
Amanda is very upset. We're very surprised of the outcome of the decision.
Now reconvicted of slander for accusing an innocent man in her roommate's murder in Italy in 2007. Knox, who was 20 years old at the time, was arrested along with her then boyfriend for the death of Meredith Kercher.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Well, there is big news in Perugia. Basically, this is where the murder of Meredith Kercher happened, and Amanda Knox is producing a Hulu documentary. And this is not the first time that someone convicted of a crime has produced their own, what I'd call, innocence fraud documentary or mockumentary. Damien Eccles did it with Amy Berg's. Hold on one second, guys. With Amy Berg. Her documentary about the West Memphis Three, it came after the Paradise Lost series. So this is not the first time we've had a killer producer. And Amanda herself is not in Perugia, but the city is very upset that there is they know what it's going to be, an innocence fraud series that all benefits Amanda Knox. She made, I think it was $3.5 million on her book. She's got another book coming out. She is basically doing everything she can to avoid falling into obscurity. And I noticed that she is interviewing people who are what I'd call real victims. People, what was hilarious is she interviewed Sarah Edmondson, who was really high up. She ran the Canadian NXIVM cult center before she left. She got in as a single woman. She was branded, and she made herself, or they made her the star of The Vow, and it made it look like she and Mark Vicente testified and was, I'm not taking anything away from his testimony, but if you watch The Vow, you would think that the NXIVM cult was brought down by the two of them. Anyway, go back to my live episode about NXIVM to hear more about that. But she's interviewing Sarah Edmondson. When Amanda Knox was the one who, after Keith Raniere, who was the cult leader of NXIVM, was convicted and sentenced to 120 years, Amanda Knox came out and said, this looks very much like a wrongful conviction, and it needs to be looked at. And it was strangely right at the time when there was leaks that Keith Raniere had gone to Jason Flom, all the usual suspects of the wrongful conviction movement. And he was thinking of starting a, what would you call that? A contest, so that who could ever find the flaws in his case would win $30,000. And after Amanda Knox came forward, they strangely had a lot less money. So I'm saying my feeling was that she was paid to promote Keith Raniere's wrongful conviction, quote unquote. But there's Sarah Edmondson being interviewed by a killer. Like, you've gone from a trafficker to a killer, being played by first a trafficker, then a killer. You're 0 for 2. I mean, what a disgusting turn of events. That's all I have to say. And well, ambitious people don't have a problem being interviewed by a killer. And so she's been doing that. She has a book coming out called Free, A Search for Meaning, like one man's search for meaning. So to get back to the subject, and recently, about 7 months ago, her conviction for slander, which she had appealed, which was like a miracle. Italy had changed their law, so it made it much easier to toss out a lot of these convictions. So they tossed out even some of the evidence against her when Amanda Knox, when her alibi was pulled by her boyfriend, Raf, she suddenly accused her boss, Patrick Lumumba, who was nothing but nice to her, of being the killer and said, it's him, I know it's him. And then doubled down on it and wrote a note and handed a note and said, this is my gift to the investigators. And she let him sit in jail for 2 weeks, never retracted. Supporters will say she retracted. She told her mom that she was unsure of what she had said, but that's not very helpful. That was totally unhelpful to Patrick Lumumba, who lost his business, really destroyed his life financially and otherwise. And she's never paid him. I think the last I heard it was in the $100,000 range, maybe more now with interest. She's never paid that, even though she got millions for her book and at one time $30,000 a pop for speaking engagements. So her star is fading, and as it's fading, she's producing her own Hulu documentary because it looked really bad, right? When she got to be a convicted slanderer, liar. So now she's going to rewrite history and create her myth, keep pushing this myth forward that one person did this instead of a group of people, meaning Rudy, Raf, and herself. And no court that looked at this has ever said that one person did this alone. And it's very interesting that she likes to talk about her exoneration. But if you go away with nothing else from this episode, know that the Court of Cassation that let her go determined that Amanda Knox was there at the scene of the crime and washed Meredith Kercher's blood off of her hands, and that it was a crime done by multiple offenders. Not a great exoneration. And most people who've looked into it agree that what they did was they illegally threw out all the DNA evidence, and there was a lot of DNA evidence or forensic evidence that implicated Amanda. Specifically, the mixed DNA of Amanda and Meredith Kercher in the room of the stage break-in, the bathroom, and the hallway, all mixed. So all Amanda's DNA and Meredith Kercher's DNA mixed together. But not only was it mixed together, it lit up under luminol very brightly. Now, Amanda Knox's supporters will tell you that she liked to rub root vegetables on her feet. And that's why it lit up. But luminol lights up in a very dull kind of way with root vegetables. But in this case, it lit up like a Christmas tree in the room of the stage break-in, which was roommate Philomena's room. So in the villa that they shared, it was Philomena, Laura, Meredith, and Amanda. And Meredith and Amanda were the two English speakers. Laura and Philomena were Italian. And they shared a bathroom. And they tried to be friends in the beginning. But pretty shortly after moving in together, they found that no one could really stand Amanda. She was like the roommate from hell, never cleaned up after herself. play the same guitar note over and over and over again, put adult toys in full view in the bathroom. I guess you could call that being, I don't know, woke sexually, but it was off-putting. Off-putting. So here we'll go to some of the media about this. We'll look at some of the media. So Perugia is apologizing for letting Hulu film there. So let's take a look, and then we're going to look at the latest interview she did with Reason, which does a lot, which is like a libertarian outfit, Reason magazine. They're also on YouTube, but they do an awful lot of innocence fraud stuff.
Hulu's new Amanda Knox series has sparked significant controversy in Perugia, Italy, where it's currently being filmed. The show, executive produced by Knox herself, revisits the infamous 2007 case surrounding the murder of British student Meredith Kercher, for which Knox and her then-boyfriend were initially convicted and later acquitted. Many locals feel the series brings unwanted attention to the city, reopening old wounds tied to a dark chapter in Perugia's history. Concerns include the impact on the city's reputation and the well-being of Kercher's family, who may see this as an exploitation of a tragedy for entertainment. The uproar has led to
This is really interesting because this is such a watered-down version of why the town is upset. They're hanging up signs remembering Meredith, and what they're really objecting to is Amanda Knox never stopping profiting off of her crime. She was convicted twice for this. So you get automatic, the Italian justice system is a multi-tiered justice system, so you get an automatic appeal. So it goes, but she was convicted twice for this. So what are we talking about here? And she was only let go after they threw out all the forensic evidence and said all of it was unreliable. And like I said, most people who really have studied the case believe that it was a political decision. I've shown articles about Hillary Clinton getting involved, other politicians getting involved. There's been reports that Amanda, when she was in jail, was treated exceptionally well and was given all sorts of extras that other prisoners didn't have. Or so, you know, this is funny. Like they're concerned that maybe this will make their town look bad. No, they're concerned that Knox is profiting off of her crime, and it turns their stomachs, as it would anyone with any kind of morality. It would turn your stomach. Love how they're like, it's so odd. They just think it might paint them in a bad light. Like anyone in New York would be like, well, we don't want someone making a documentary about a crime here because people might think crime happens here in New York. You know what I mean? That's not it, guys. I think we all understand that crime can happen anywhere, right?
An official response from Perugia's mayor, with some residents and officials expressing discomfort over the renewed spotlight on the tragic event. As filming continues, debates about ethical storytelling and respect for victims' families have intensified, with many questioning the purpose of re-examining this case on a global streaming platform. If you want to stay updated on this and similar content, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like the video if you found it informative and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the Amanda Knox series. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so that was like just like the least sort of, pretty much the only video I could find that wasn't kind of like a narration on it. But I want to show you some of the actual print media on it. Hold on one second. So we'll start with everybody's favorite, right? Here's Yahoo News. Oh, this is Rolling Stone. My apologies. It's under Yahoo Entertainment. Rolling Stone also produces a lot of what I'd call innocence fraud media. Amanda Knox, upcoming Hulu series sparks backlash in Italy. Whoa, that's what a face, huh? Like, doesn't she look like it's a dark, right? That lighting, and she looks a little scary there. Locals of an Italian city are furious that Hulu's controversial Amanda Knox drama is filming in their region, claiming the upcoming TV show will bring fresh and unwanted attention to the fact that British student Meredith Kercher was murdered there in 2007. Production for Blue Moon. Why is it called Blue Moon? I mean, all I can think of is the Rodgers and Hart song, Blue Moon. Like, Blue Moon. I'm curious as to maybe Tuesday Money. I think I saw you in the chat. Do you know why they're calling it Blue Moon? Began last week in Perugia, a medieval city about 2 hours northeast of Rome, starring Tell Me Lies star Grace Van Patten. The 8-episode series is based on the true story, or not so true story, based on Amanda Knox's innocence fraud narrative, says I. Okay, sorry, guys. Let me go back. Based on the true story of how Knox was wrongfully convicted for the murder of her roommate and her 16-year-old odyssey to set herself free. It took her 16 years to set herself free. Not 4, not 3 or 4. This is so hard to take. According to Hulu's official synopsis, the Italians are like, no, thank you. 21-year-old Kercher had been studying abroad in Perugia when she was killed. Her body was found partially, it goes into details. Knox and her then Italian boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, was convicted for Kercher's murder and served 4 years in prison before their release in 2011 after substantial flaws were found in the police investigation. Untrue. Untrue. But okay. I'd love to hear what those were. They're like, we just can't rely on this forensic evidence anymore, guys. It's all going out. But strangely, Rudy Gooddays, who did this crime with them, who took a fast-track trial and was convicted that way, none of his forensic evidence was thrown out, convicted on the same forensic evidence. It was all deemed reliable. Isn't that interesting? His conviction was never overturned or shortened because of it. They were both, and so that's what Amanda Knox supporters will say, is that the forensic evidence that implicates Rudy is all reliable, but the forensic evidence that implicates Raph, and there's a lot, there's his DNA on Meredith Kercher's bra clasp. There's also his footprint in Kercher's blood on the bath mat in the bathroom. And there was also a double DNA knife, it's called, with Meredith Kercher's DNA on the blade and Amanda Knox's DNA in the hitch of the knife. So supporters just say it's all corrupted and it's, transfer. They won't tell you how it was transferred or corrupted. It just was. But Rudy, they know, just did it alone, totally. Very much like the Central Park Five. They were both definitively acquitted in 2015. What I mean by very much like the Central Park Five is that supporters of the Central Park Five will say, well, Mateus Reyes, who had nothing to lose by confessing to it all, they'll throw out all the confessions, which is a lot of confessions, and all the physical evidence, which there's a lot of that too. Go check my Twitter if you want to learn more about that. And as well as as well as the fact that his confession is totally unbelievable and couldn't be done, and the fact that nobody who treated Tricia Miley thought that one person did it alone, and that they saw different handprints on her body. They didn't think she was going to live. They were giving her her last rites, etc. So it's a little weird that they want to frame all those people knowing that, knowing that the jogger could wake up and say you were wrong. They were both definitively acquitted in 2015. Rudy Gude was convicted of Meredith Kercher's murder in 2008. And he was released from prison in 2021 after serving 13 years of a 16-year sentence. And he points the finger at Raph and Amanda, just FYI. Now, nearly 2 decades after the international scandal, locals are concerned the series will bring new, unwanted attention to their city. For too long, Perugia was sadly famous in the world as the city of Meredith Kercher's murder. Former Perugia councilor Margarita Socia said on Facebook, "Is it right that our community is associated with such a terrible crime again?" Residents also hung banners around the city that read, "Respect for Meredith" in Italian. The outcry prompted an apology and an explanation from Perugia Mayor Vittoria Ferdinandi, who said she believed allowing the production to film in the city would allow the community to have more control and authorization over every scene filmed there. "We could have not authorized the filming of 5 scenes in Perugia," Fernandi said in an open letter, which was also published in regional Italian newspapers. "But they would have been filmed in any other town in our region. We believe that allowing the scenes to be filmed here would provide us an element of greater guarantee and control because, as we requested, we were able to view and authorize every scene." Knox and Monica Lewinsky, oh, I forgot this. I buried the lead, guys, are among the executive producers on the project, as well as This Is Us KJ Steinberg, who I've never heard of. Do you guys know who that is? Who also served as the series creator. Last week, Kercher's sister addressed the series, saying she found it difficult to understand what purpose the show would serve. Right on, Meredith's sister. Meredith will always be remembered for her own fight for life. And yet, in her absence, her love and personality continues to shine, Stephanie Kercher said in a statement. "We will forever feel this is indiscernible void, but we live by Meredith's standards with dignity." Sure do. So that is just a little of that. Thought this was interesting. Also, in the Sun UK, like, she just can't stand not being the center of attention, Amanda Knox. And she is determined to fool every single person on planet Earth. And it bothers her being judged. It's a real theme with Amanda Knox, being judged. And she even went and met with the prosecutor. And that came out in the papers like, he was like, it was fine. Nothing bad happened. She was fairly civil. And that began, like, the prosecutor and Amanda, that began stories saying the prosecutor and Amanda Knox were now best friends. Yeah, Rudy's DNA was there. I'm not denying Rudy did it. I'm just saying 3 people did it. Just like every court that's looked at this concluded. Same thing. No court that's looked at all the evidence in this case has concluded one person did it. So hold on. So the Sun UK went and hold on one second. And did an article on all the controversies Amanda Knox has had. Knox shock from crowdfunding her wedding to $3.5 million memoir. Amanda Knox is, I guess is that in pounds or euros? Pounds. Memoir. Amanda Knox's controversial fortune as insensitive TV drama slammed. She tries to have it all, the fame and the money, says Kercher's family lawyer as rift deepens. She has fought long to clear her name after being wrongfully convicted. Look how our papers just join in. Just join in on this. Come on, guys. Everybody knows she was wrongfully convicted. And yet in my personal life, when I tell people that I do a true crime podcast, the number one question I get asked is always about Amanda Knox. What's up with Amanda Knox? I know I'm supposed to believe that she's innocent, but she really rubs me the wrong way. I find her very creepy. I think she could have done it. You know, her dad got her a PR team before he hired a lawyer. Gagardi Marriott. And he said it was the smartest thing he ever did. So they really propagandized the American public, whereas people in Europe have a much better grip on the facts of the case than we do here. But now Amanda Knox's career since the brutal 2007 slaying is being questioned by the Brits' heartbroken family, who have accused her of repeatedly seeking to profit from the tragedy. Well, I mean, that's just obvious. And then look at this weird, her outfits are so weird. Some of these outfits. What is this? Is this like Hello Dolly meets Rhinestone Cowboy? That's her look there. It's odd, right? And that's her husband now, Christopher Robinson. There she is, glammed up. I mean, she's famous for nothing else but this. If it weren't for this, no one would know her name. If it were not for the fact that she was convicted twice of taking a life in a heinous crime, nobody would know her name. Here she is again with laundry detergents. She's very woke. Free and clear laundry, rainforest breeze laundry detergent. Since being released from prison in 2011, the American has certainly fueled fascination around the case, appearing in the 2016 Netflix documentary. Apparently that wasn't good enough. It didn't do enough to propagandize the public. She's got to do another one. That thing was ridiculous, that series. It was so pro Amanda Knox. It blamed her conviction on the press. And being paid a reported $3.5 million for her autobiography, and that's in pounds. But neither were her final words on matters with a controversial new Disney TV series sparking fresh fury this week. The 8-part Hulu drama, Amanda, a coming-of-age horror story. I mean, this is almost like parody, guys. Focuses on Knox's 16-year odyssey to set herself free and has begun filming in the medieval town of Perugia. Produced in part by Amanda herself. Okay, so that's one of it. One of her things. She has found plenty of other ways to stay in the spotlight too, including stand-up shows. She's now doing stand-up comedy, podcasts, and even a 100-pound wellness app. So she's a wellness guru. She's a little bit like Gwyneth Paltrow. It's not goop. It's like, ugh. Ugh. Her wellness app. No thanks. But that will be a little comfort to the Kerchers from South London, who continue to fight for answers over what really led to the tragic death of 21-year-old student Meredith. Too bad it didn't happen in America, where they could sue her civilly. And this would just go to the Kercher family. There's beautiful Meredith. You know, Amanda is often called a exchange student, but she was taking one language course and she was really there to party. Meredith Kercher had a full course load with credits that, where she actually got credits. None of, Amanda Knox wasn't getting credits. She was mainly there to have a good time. Hold on one second, guys. Okay. That would also, you can imagine how annoying it must be to have a roommate like that, who's bringing in men, who's out partying all the time, who's not cleaning, who's not flushing the toilet. When you have under the gun with a lot of heavy coursework. There she is again. Amanda argued that she needed the money from her first memoirs to pay legal fees. And then she crowdfunded Cruel Trolls, Amanda Knox waiting to be heard. There she is pregnant. There's Labyrinth. Amanda remains angry about the way she was portrayed in the days after Meredith's murder, writing in 2021. People like the story, the psychotic man-eater, the dirty ice queen, Foxy Noxy. Foxy Noxy was a nickname she gave herself. And according to all her friends, she was man crazy. and she didn't clean. So that's how she got that reputation, by her own actions. And despite having twice been cleared of the killing and twice convicted, she still received cruel comments. I don't leave her cruel comments. I want to be as far away from her as possible. 3 years ago, she had a daughter, Eureka, with Christopher, who she wed in 2018. But she revealed trolls say things like, "Are you going to murder your baby?" However, her own comments could be more sensitive too, with Amanda seemingly making jokes about the case. Recently on Instagram, she posted an image of a broken plant pot next to her cat with the caption, "Who done it? It wasn't me." There was also some people who worked at an animal shelter who said that she adopted a dog and it was returned with cut up paws and in very poor shape. She didn't keep it. That's gone into the memory hold. That's been memory hold, that story. The Disney Plus drama, which is being filmed now, is certain to put the spotlight back on Amanda. Grace Van Patten from Tell Me Lies will portray Amanda in the series, and Irish actress Sharon Horgan will play her mom, Etta Mellis. The Substance star Margaret Qualley was originally going to take the Knox role, but scheduling conflicts meant she had to pull out. So I wonder if that was really scheduling conflicts, or did she look deeper into it and was like, I'm not playing this. I'm not taking part of this. All the profits go to this woman. We can only hope that it wasn't really scheduling conflicts. The drama has also been co-produced by Monica Lewinsky, who found herself the subject of global attention after former U.S. President Bill Clinton. We all know that story. Monica and Amanda are said to be very close because they have a lot in common and support each other. So basically, they have a lot in common in that they take no responsibility for their behavior and blame everybody else. I mean, the Disney drama is not the first production about Meredith's murder. British director Michael Winterbottom's movie The Face of an Angel in 2014 starred Cara Delevingne, was loosely based on the case. The Kercher family attempted to address this. In it, Daniel Bruhl plays a director investigating a murder in Italy, but there is little time for the victim. The Kercher family attempted to address this long-standing imbalance with her journalist dad, John Kercher, writing a book entitled Meredith in 2013 about our heartbreaking quest for the truth. So she like fundraises. There's Monica Lewinsky. But she kind of gloms on to that, gloms on to people like that. And so, see, we're exactly alike. I know I was convicted twice of a heinous crime, and you did none such crime. Nothing you did was illegal, Monica Lewinsky, but we're twinsies. Look, we're twinsies. We got so much in common. So when we come back, I'm going to take just a quick break. When I get back, we're going to look at Amanda Knox's amazing lie-a-thon, in my view, on Reason TV. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
We don't take a break. Grab a snack or maybe a glass of wine. Roberta will be back in no time. This podcast is listener supported, so smash that like button and subscribe or become a patron for exclusive content if you are so inclined. Have something to say? Shoot Roberta a super chat. She will do her best to read it on air without delay. Now Roberta's back and ready to put the true back in true crime. Here's Roberta.
Okay, here we go.
This is the recent interview with Nick Gillespie. I'm Billy Binion, subbing in for Nick. Our guest this week is Amanda.
I've never seen this guy before. Has anybody seen this guy before? Never. Never have I seen this baby-faced reporter. And I know that libertarians, so this is a libertarian outfit, tend to be very anti-authoritative, anti-big government, and I guess they consider our legal system part of big government. But this guy is like Amanda Knox's Mark, baby-faced Mark, waiting to swallow up all her lies, in my view, and look and watch this intro. Listen to this intro. It's exactly the Amanda Knox talking points right from the Amanda Knox website. Exactly. So he'll say it's a sex game gone wrong, even though the prosecutor never argued that in court. And just all the ridiculous PR talking points, and it was one man, just one. They couldn't figure it out with all the forensic experts. Italy is it's a medieval town, guys. They were so far behind. It was like the Dark Ages. They just couldn't solve a crime of this magnitude there. They couldn't figure out it was just one guy. When his poo was suspiciously left in the toilet and not flushed, and Amanda Knox was sure to point it out to all saved it like it was a treasure, and pointed it out to all the investigators of Rudy Goudet, like, hey, look. And Amanda Knox likes to say that there was no evidence of me at the crime scene, but she's reducing the crime scene to just Meredith's room, and there was evidence. There was a size 7 shoe footprint on the pillowcase in Meredith's blood. Those shoes were never found or connected to Amanda Knox, but that is her shoe size. There was also Amanda Knox's lamp in Meredith's room. That one lamp was Amanda Knox's only light source, and there it is. What was it doing in Meredith Kercher's room? Never explained. Also, Amanda Knox seemed to know before the door was opened what had happened to Meredith Kercher. And as soon as her alibi was pulled, she had a memory. She put herself at the scene of the crime, said she covered her ears to muffle out Meredith's scream, and blamed her boss, Patrick Lumumba, who she worked for at the pub Le Chic. Meredith Kercher was going to take over Amanda Knox's shift because Amanda Knox was not a serious worker. So that was part of the rivalry. Some of the other points of tension between Meredith and Amanda was that there was these young men who lived downstairs. Giacomo was one, and Amanda Knox had a mad crush on him, and he wasn't interested in Amanda. He was interested in Meredith, and they dated. And that made Amanda Knox very angry. Also, right before this terrible crime, Amanda Knox was looking to celebrate Halloween with Meredith and her friends, and they kind of blew her off. So that's some of it, some of the issues with them. But supporters will always say, and Amanda Knox herself likes to say, we were friends, we were friends, we were friends. They were friends for about a minute and a half.
Amanda Knox. In 2007, while studying abroad in Italy, she was accused of murdering her roommate, Meredith Kercher.
Okay, she wasn't really studying abroad. She had one class. So there was no studying really going on with Amanda Knox. It was mostly partying, and she was going through thousands of dollars a week. And so what Rudy Gude says about the crime, and I tend to believe, is that it started over a fight over Meredith's missing rent money. Did Amanda Knox take it and purchase substances with it? And was Rudy Gude there to facilitate some of that? I don't know.
Sure. In what the lead prosecutor claimed was a bizarre sex game gone wrong. Despite mishandled DNA, a coerced confession, and a lack of credible evidence, Knox was convicted and spent nearly 4 years in an Italian prison.
A coerced confession? That was not a coerced confession. It was not coerced, and she spontaneously accused her boss of her crime that she was convicted twice for. It's not a confession. It was not coerced. And it was affirmed even after even with the new laws that threw out some of the evidence. She was still affirmed her conviction for slander. Let's put it that way. So I love how these journalists are like, well, I'm talking to a convicted liar. Let me just reiterate everything that they said as absolutely factual. That's what we call reliable sourcing.
Before being exonerated in 2015, her case was a media spectacle that sensationalized every aspect of her life. I spoke with Knox about her views on true crime after her story became one of the biggest examples of the modern era, the psychological impact of being in prison for something she didn't do, what she thinks the US criminal justice system gets right and wrong, and what she has to say to people who still believe she's lying. She also shared a fascinating tidbit about her current relationship with that lead prosecutor, something that will be featured more in her new book, Free, which is currently available for pre-order. And now, to the recent interview.
Oh, there's a great quote I read. He was basically like, it was cordial, but the way Amanda Knox is presented is like, we're now best friends. And there were articles like the unusual friendship between the prosecutor and Amanda Knox. And it's great for Amanda Knox. Amanda Knox really knows the power of that. Well, the man who convicted me is friendly with me. He sees what a good person I am. If you go to the Joe Rogan interview where she lies to Joe Rogan for 3 hours straight, or you go to my episode on it called Amanda Knox Lies to Joe Rogan for 3 hours straight, you can see that her obsession really is being seen as a good person. and innocent. It's not that she wants to prove that she's innocent legally or otherwise. She just wants everyone to believe it. That's the most important thing to her. So she knows the power of saying, hey, I'm best friends with the prosecutor. Even the prosecutor thinks I didn't do it. Come on, guys. What's wrong with the what she calls, when she talks about me, she calls it the innocence fraud movement. There is no movement. There's just me and like Martin Pribe, who just talks about Chicago, Innocence Fraud Watch UK, and me. That's it. There's like 3 of us who talk about this wrongful conviction movement being the grift that it is. And she says now that she wants to be a advocate for the wrongfully convicted, but she's been going to these innocence conferences for a while. Been pictured with Ryan Ferguson, made videos for Brendan Dassey and Stephen Avery's accomplice, Theresa Hallback's murderer.
Amanda Knox, thank you for talking to Reason.
Well, thank you for reasoning with me.
So you were arrested and imprisoned in November 2007. 2 years later, you were found guilty of a murder.
Yeah, you see no horror on her face. She's like, yeah, that happened. Yeah. 3 of us just killed someone. Yeah, that happened. She's always off tone. She's, in my view, a psychopath. So she can imitate human behavior, but not well.
That you would ultimately be exonerated for. We know that wrongful convictions...
Let's talk about that exoneration. Do you call it exoneration, Amanda Knox? We're going to let her go because we're going to throw out all the forensic evidence. For what reason, we don't know. Illegally, against the laws of the land. We're just going to make an exception in this case and throw out all the forensic evidence. But strangely, Rudy Goodday's conviction on that same forensic evidence is going to stand. And we're determined that this was a crime done by multiple assailants, that Amanda Knox was there at the scene of the crime and washed Meredith Kercher's blood off her hands. What an exoneration, guys. Isn't it amazing that people still think she's guilty? Isn't it incredible that dum-dums like me still think she's guilty? This is brand new, bossy. Oh, hey, bossy Texas chick. Hello, bossy Texas chick. Nice to see you. Yeah, this is new. Like either today or the day before, like very, very new.
Happen not just across the country, but obviously across the world. So there is someone somewhere right now who is trying to come to terms with what you had to come to terms with in those moments, processing it as we speak right here. What would you say to that person?
Really? You don't want to find out what Stephanie Kercher and the Kercher family had to come to terms with, losing their sister in this brutal way? Isn't that odd that Reason TV didn't run to Stephanie Kercher and her family, find out what that's like? Because that happens so often.
If they were sitting in front of you.
A lot of things. First of all, and it's interesting, I've had to have conversations like this with people before, because a lot of people who are in the midst of their own crises, whether they are the family members of the person or the person themselves, come reach out to me and ask me this specific question. The first thing that I would say is not what people expect me to say, which is there's a light at the end of the tunnel and it'll all work out. Like I never want people to think that you can rely on the truth ultimately coming out, because
right, you don't want the truth coming out. You can't rely on the truth coming out because the truth won't help you if you're guilty. It's not going to help you. You got to create a false narrative and ideally get your daddy to put $1 million down on a PR team even before you hire a lawyer. Does anybody remember this? Wait, hold on. Let me pull this up. hold on one hot minute. I think actually I'm going to have to make room. Hold on one second. Because this is key. Does anybody remember when Amanda Knox messed up and said this? Hold on. Hold on one second. I know that suspense is killing you guys. Okay, it's loading up, guys. But she slipped and she was talking to a bunch of students and she said this. Very few people know what actually happened. Shouldn't that be one person knows what actually happened and the other person sadly lost their life and can't tell us? But now very few people know. Just Raph, myself, and Rudy know what actually happened. Because we don't really know the mechanics of it and we don't know exactly why it happened. You know, I can have a theory. My theory is that it started over a fight over money. She was going through thousands. Her supporters like to say that she was buying truffles, meaning like chocolates, thousands of dollars worth of it. But I happen to think that she was using substances and she was running out of money and she didn't want to go home and hang, you know, her father didn't want her to go to Perugia. He didn't think she was mature enough and she didn't want to admit defeat. And so when she got confronted and her public mask of a good person was about to be exposed to the real Amanda Knox, and I think Meredith Kercher was very smart and saw the real Amanda Knox in all her darkness, and that's what started a fight.
That is not something that we can count on necessarily. I can't promise that justice will ultimately result in any of these cases. What I do reassure people is that it is possible to live your best life regardless of the circumstances that you are in, and that your life is not over even though you are going through what you're going through. There's no telling how it's going to work out. There's a lot of factors that go into that.
You could make millions on a book deal. And she seemed to really thrive in jail. Her fellow inmates called her the actress, said that they would share their food with her. She would never share any of the special treats that she got, that she didn't like. Same complaints that Meredith had, didn't clean her body, stunk. Those are all problems that Meredith Kercher had with her. But she seemed to really be in her element in jail. She seemed to love it. There's a moment in the Joe Rogan interview where he asks Amanda Knox, did you keep some of the habits you had from being in jail? She's like, well, yeah, I washed my underwear in the sink. Like, meaning what he meant was like, did the trauma stay with you? And she's like, well, yeah, I had one habit. I just, now I like to, wash out my underwear in the sink. Missed opportunity to elicit pity. A rare missed opportunity by Amanda Knox to elicit pity from the audience.
There's luck. There's the right people showing up at the right time. There's the evidence coming through. There's technology that comes available.
Really? What evidence absolved you, Amanda? What evidence absolved you and showed that it wasn't possible that your DNA, why did no other roommate's DNA was found mixed with Meredith Kercher's DNA that lit up like so brightly under luminol in so many places? And what would that be doing if the break-in wasn't staged? So Amanda Knox had already staged a break-in before she went to Perugia as a prank with her girlfriends. She'd done it before. So she staged this break-in to make it look like someone broke in and robbed and essayed and killed Meredith Kercher alone. And when she says there's no evidence of me in the room that had happened, Meredith's room, that was also the room that she did a lot of cleaning of. And it was noted that it looked like there was concerted effort to leave traces of Rudy and clean and erase all traces of herself and Raph. But they didn't do a very good job, because there was actually no DNA anywhere of anyone in the kitchen, which is crazy. Which is the room they admitted to being in a lot. I believe the washer was still warm, like it had been on. And there was also testimony, it was never given, but there was testimony to the investigators that guy who owned a store said that morning there was this blue-eyed, and Amanda Knox's blue eyes would have stuck out in Perugia, waiting, blue-eyed young woman waiting for this, like a bodega store to open. And when it did open, she went right to the cleaning section, but he couldn't remember what she bought. And the place stunk of bleach. And ditto, there was found in Raph's drawer the murder weapon, cleaned, but not cleaned enough. Still had Amanda Knox's DNA on the hitch of the knife and Meredith Kercher's DNA on the blade. But, when people say, oh, well, of course their DNA is going to be found together because they live together. Why is not Philomena and Meredith's DNA that lit up under luminol found together in multiple places in the villa? Why not Laura and Meredith? It was only Amanda. Strangely, the only one who didn't have an alibi for the time. And strangely, turned off her cell phone with Raph at the same time that night and turned it on the same time together the next morning. Only time they did that. And I love how when Raph calls the police, he's like, no, nothing's missing. How could he know that? How could he know nothing's missing? It's like nothing was stolen of any serious import.
All of that plays into whether or not an innocent person is going to get out of prison and then successfully reintegrate into society. The thing that they always need to know, though, is it is entirely up to them to figure out how to be their best selves in these circumstances. That is their power, and no one can take that away from them.
So you're essentially saying, at least what I'm hearing, is that there is still life to be lived if you're in these awful situations.
Yes.
Which seems pretty remarkable because...
It seems pretty remarkable because Meredith no longer has a life. Thanks to Amanda, Raph, and Rudy, in my opinion.
Prison must be a pretty horrible place, is it not?
It's 100% a horrible place. I think that message doesn't lessen the tragedy of what is occurring. And the way that I talk to people about this is when I was in that space, I woke up sad. I spent the whole day sad, and I went to bed sad. That was just my emotional default setting, which was very new to me.
When I wasn't meeting with the priest or meeting with my mother or filming a music video or being in a play. Or writing endless letters to DJ, my true love at home. She thrived in prison in my view. She was in her element with other people like herself.
A very happy kid, a very happy person up until this circumstance happened to me. And that didn't change the fact, though, that there was always something that I could do in any given day that would make it worth living. And I couldn't, plan ahead of time, next day, the next day, what am I going to do to make life worth living? I could, in this very day, in this very moment, ask myself, okay, what can I do that is worth living for? And it might be something really simple, like writing a letter to my mom. It might be reading a book and educating myself. It might be doing as many sit-ups as I possibly could. There are always things that I could find that.
Oh, this is like, her Instagram is so insensitive. Like, even supporters have said to me, why doesn't she go away and do something else? Why is she stuck in this crime? Because nobody wants to hear her talk about anything else. Like when she started Labyrinth, it was supposed to not be a true crime podcast. And now it's kind of like in between, this like odd in between thing where it's like part inspirational. She said to Joe Rogan, what I can give to people is I can make them feel seen. But hold on, I just want to show you. I hope I have this. I hope I downloaded this. Yes. So this is from her Instagram. I did 1/10. So it was like a video of her doing sit-ups. I did 1/10 of my daily prison record. She's got to remind you that she was in prison, guys. Got to remind you all the time. And she quits everything that she does. So at one point she was going to go back to school. She was going back to school. She dropped out. She raised all this money for her wedding when she was already married legally, so she could have some kind of like costume wedding. And if you read the prison guards report on Amanda Knox, she said that she never needed any medication to sleep like the other prisoners. She was always totally self-confident, doing well, and just wasn't falling apart emotionally as you would think an innocent person prison was. Almost like she knew she got herself there in some ways.
That were meaningful to me, even in their humble ways, that made at least life in that moment worth living.
Do you find that that's transferable to people experiencing tragedies that have nothing to do with wrongful convictions and being stuck in a concrete box?
Yes, I think it's applicable to anyone who's going through a horrendous circumstance. I'm
really going to try to let this play, but every line of this is so offensive. It's really hard. Stuck in a concrete box, almost like stuck in a pine box, 6 feet under, buried 6 feet under. See, because there's only room for one victim here. So the victim totally has to be obscured. Working on another episode very much on this theme. If you're not following me on Twitter, I'm talking a lot about this on Twitter. Follow me at Roberta Glass Pod. But in the wrongful conviction movement, there is only room for one victim. So now the victimizer, the killer, has to be turned into the victim. Even if they reoffend, it's prison that did it to them. They're just a victim of their upbringing, circumstance. Everything bad happens to them. And the victim must be totally obscured and forgotten altogether, and their family. And if they do mention the victim's family, they will villainize them and say, see, they wanted me to be given the maximum prison sentence, meaning like they were like a pitchforky mob after innocent old me. So deluded, so lost their head with anger that they couldn't see I'm innocent. And Meredith's family asked her not to visit Meredith's grave, and she did it anyway. With Raph, is what I heard. They love re-victimizing the victim's family. But why are we so, America, I really think it's because we love freedom in this country, but America is like, cannot resist the story of a wrongful conviction. Doesn't matter how improbable it is, possible it is, even if you thought about it for 2 minutes, like the Central Park 5, they just want to believe it. It's like and it's also our media and our supports making these killers into folk heroes, and also our entertainment, all the movies and songs. We love to make these people into heroes. Hurricane by anybody think about Hurricane, or Lucinda Williams' song about the West Memphis Three that's totally inaccurate factually. There's like a zillion. Indigo Girls also have a song about Carla Faye Tucker, who was executed on death row. I mean, that one was like a serious psychopath. Said she climaxed, murder during murder. She got such satisfaction out of it. Her brutal murder.
Discovered that with time. I really thought that this experience that I was going through was very unique, and it made me feel very ostracized from the rest of humanity. That was part of it. That was part of the sadness, was feeling like I didn't belong to the rest of humanity anymore. And I slowly, over the course of years after coming home, have realized that we are all carrying our own private tragedies with us, and we all can feel trapped in the circumstances of our lives in a way that makes us feel like we don't have agency. We don't have a say in who we are or where we belong. And my message to people is, well, regardless of where you are and where you belong, there is something that you can do that matters to you, and do that. Find that and do it.
So I think it's important.
Nothing can stop
so
you.
much of what people understand about the criminal justice system and prison comes from stuff like Law and Order SVU.
Unfortunately, yes.
Right, exactly, which gives a very obviously a distorted picture of what life is actually like there. So for people,
says a guy, I bet this guy has never stepped foot in a courtroom. How much do you want to bet? When I was a juror, the judge said, "Are you going to hold it against these lawyers for not being as polished and theatrical as on something like Law and Order, SVU, etc.?" But also there's the other element where we have media that makes our police force look so corrupt, so over the top. I mean, when you have something like When They See Us, when you have the investigator saying round up all the men of color in Harlem and bring them into the police station, and no one points it out. Everyone's like giving except the police officer who arrested the black police officer who arrested the Central Park 5. I mean, that also paints a distorted picture. But isn't it interesting that she said she thought she was trapped? I'm like, is that what happened? You felt trapped and you had no agency out? Is that what led you to killing Meredith along with Rudy and Raph? But I thought it was also really interesting that maybe she knows something's wrong with herself. She's like, here I am. Like she always knew something was wrong, separate from society. Then I realized that everyone feels a little out of place and has their own struggles. I'm certain she knows she's a psychopath.
Many people across the world know your name, but might not know really the day-to-day that you experienced for those 4 years before you were ultimately exonerated of killing your study abroad roommate. Can you just talk about that a little bit? About what you're talking about how you found purpose in prison. What were you experiencing that you had to overcome there just on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So a day in the life of prison.
When
Yeah.
you put it that way.
Just what's a day in the life of prison like? Well, you are trapped in a box until someone opens the door, and that person typically is in.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. We may have to do this in parts. But here she is. She's laughing when she remembers prison. Huge smile comes to her face. And then she's like, oh, I'm off tone. She stops herself. And then she's like, oh, what can I say about it? And then now she's echoing his language, mirroring his language the way psychopaths mirror. And now she's trapped in a box. You know who's trapped in a box? The dead, the murdered. I mean, what is wrong? Why is our culture so callous towards victims? I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get and when he's talking, it really makes me think of Chicago. We both reach for the gun. She's like the puppet master. He's saying all the things all the PR talking points, and she's like nodding along. That's right. We both reached for the gun. Yep. Terrible. I was exonerated. Just keep saying exonerated, wrongfully convicted. Hit all the points. Our justice system is terrible, but it's not our justice system. It's the Italian justice system. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Never mind that it's so defense friendly. Do you know the Court of Cassation that let her walk with the determination that she was there at the scene of the crime and washed Meredith's blood off her hands, and that this was a crime done by many perpetrators? Do you know that court overturned, gave an innocent stamp to Armstrong's, the bike riders, doping doctor. Nope, he's fully innocent. So, I mean, it's a very defense-friendly system. The fact that she was convicted twice in it should tell you something. This was not a vibe. She loves to say they had a vibe that I did it. No one else in the villa, no one else in the town, just they wanted to frame the American. And that was the talking point. Anti-American sentiments. Oh, don't even get me talking about that. I've got a tongue twister there. Anti-Americanism, sexism, and false confessions, which she had. I mean, it wasn't even a confession, A, and B, she had none of the risk factors, low IQ, no one withheld food and water. She didn't have to be there. They told her to go home. It wasn't over long hours. It happened very quickly into it. As soon as her alibi was pulled, she blamed Patrick Lumumba, her boss, who was a good stand-in, she thought, for Rudy Gude, the other African man she did the crime with. So she made her African boss the stand-in for the man she really committed the crime with.
In a military uniform, and they are going to be shepherding you from one box to the next box where you are kept enclosed. You do not have agency over your body. You do not have agency over your possessions. There is zero privacy. So at any given moment, you can be strip searched. You can have your things taken away from you, your things destroyed. It's so in that way, it's both deeply dehumanizing and utterly humiliating. And at the same time, it's also banal, right? Like, you are just a body. You're just sort of a body there that they just have to keep in a box for a while. And it's very impersonal in that way. And you are there alongside other bodies that are just encapsulated for a.
It was so personal with her. She had People from the American Embassy coming to visit her, checking on her, special food she was allowed. I mean, much nicer. You're treated much more nicely than an American jail or prison. Come on, Amanda. This is absurd.
A while, and people are
and who pointed out, was it Bossy Texas chick who was pointing out the background? Why did she have that cup? Why that cup with the straw in the background? Why did that make it in? We got the plant, we got a yellow couch here. Get that? That's kind of, dynamic maybe to look at a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah, odd. Here's my takeout cup from where I don't know.
grappling with that, and that sort of the injustice and in the dehumanity of that in different ways. Some people are overly medicating themselves with, the antidepressants or the methadone, whatever it may be, to get through the experience. And you'll see a lot of prisoners just sort of being comatose throughout the entire time. You'll find other prisoners who are really embracing the environment, and suddenly they're surrounded by a potential peer group that they can socialize with. And just typically these are people who are not in for a very long time, people who are sort of in the ins and outers, who can skate by with a year or two of this experience. They're not the ones who are facing decades and decades, and they'll be playing cards but even people who are there for a long time, like there's a social world that exists within prison because it's so encapsulated. These are your people, whether you like them or not. You are just stuck there with them, and it's important to develop relationships, and you do that by buying people cigarettes and playing cards and doing little favors. I had a little prison hustle, which was to help people who couldn't read or write, and there were many of them who could not, to write letters to their loved ones, to read their court documents. So it's both horrifically, tragically inhumane and utterly banal. And yeah,
that last part is actually, I was wondering if you would say that, because the part about it being banal, because over the course of covering criminal justice issues for years, you talk to people who've been in prison, and one thing you hear from people who've actually been on the inside and, not just watch true crime shows, is that it's just really fucking boring.
Yes, it's very boring.
Right. And that.
Oh my God, has nobody heard this before, that jail is boring? That's all you hear about it, is boring, and you need jail and prison are boring. That's all you hear about it. Does anybody think it's exciting? Does anyone watch Oz and think that's actually what goes down? I don't know. Is this guy the guy? Is he saying that Amanda covered this, or he's covered prison issues like this? I wonder how was he from Northwestern, or how did he get indoctrinated into this mindset? That's what I'd like to know. So, I mean, there are wrongful convictions. They do happen, but just let's think logically about wrongful convictions, okay? I just think that they're very rare compared to the amount of innocence fraud that we have. The tsunami, I like to call it, of innocence fraud sweeping the country. First of all, there's a financial incentive for innocence fraud, meaning once these lawyers get their client out, they sue the police, they sue the state, they sue the city for wrongful conviction. Sometimes they can just sue, even if their client's acquitted, for wrongful arrest, right? Etc. That kind of thing. So, and often they're in our civil courts where the bar of evidence is much lower. You just have to you don't have to prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt. No one's familiar with the case. You're not up against a prosecutor or any of the witnesses. You have to just make it 51% more likely that you were wrongfully convicted. So we're kind of like in a rigged court. A lot of times they'll settle, the police will settle, or the city will settle and let their insurance pay it out. But the problem with that is they're like pigeons. They'll just keep coming back for more with more and more clients. So they'll say, well, it cost us more money to fight it. So it's very lucrative. And to stop anything that's making people money is very hard. And also that it's lawyers, and that people are scared of lawyers and writing about lawyers and speaking out against this movement. And also it's a movement. It's almost like speaking out against Mother Theresa or something like that in her time. I know I'm thinking of one guy who did speak out against Mother Theresa, but it's called the Innocence Project. People assume that they're doing good work because nobody's covering the other side of the story. And even when they have scandals, there's always an excuse. Well, that's not really the National Innocence Project. It's not McDonald's headquarters. It's your local franchise down the street. They'll make a million excuses. There was recently Leonard Cure, a guy who got pulled over for speeding and tried to push a cop into traffic. I did an episode about it. And the whole press followed the line that he was really exonerated. It wasn't that he was wrongfully exonerated and that he's just a guy who's prone to this kind of violence. It was that he had PTSD from his wrongful conviction that made him lash out at the officer who very politely pulled him over for reckless driving on the highway. And that's what caused his end. So the police officer, in order to save his own life, had to open fire and end Leonard Cure's life. So, I mean, it's taught. I mean, there are these innocence clinics that are taught in our universities. It's just, and some of these early cases, like the Rosenbergs and Sacco and Vanzetti, are taught as American myths of wrongful conviction. It's wild.
Just time, it melds together and absolutely drags on.
A single day will last forever, but then all of a sudden you'll blink and months of your life are gone. And you're just like, when did that happen? So like, it's the experience of time is very bizarre in prison, and it's one of the more difficult things to come back into the world with, because here we are living our lives, having things to do, emails to answer, phone calls, whatever. There you have stuff like in the idea of time, like you have ways to spend time, and time has, in a way, becomes like cheap. I don't know. Like there's this very different relationship to time. There's a sense of urgency on the outside that you don't have when you're inside, because you're just stuck and you're trying to find ways to occupy your time that doesn't make you just want to bang your head against a wall.
Right. And then you also have written about some of the more kind of dramatic indignities that you experienced, constantly being solicited for sex by people who were supposed to be in, positions of authority. One of your cellmates attacking you and you not being able to defend yourself really because it would have hurt your chances in court, and the public perception of you, which was already in a dire place at the time. It's because you were ultimately exonerated. I feel like so many people would be immediately horrified by that. But we forget that that's also, I mean, wouldn't you say that's pretty terrible even if someone is guilty of a crime?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would argue that the indignities that so many people face in prison,
I would say they're nothing to the indignities that the victims' families put through. Did anybody watch Susan Smith's parole hearing today and see what the family were put through and are going to have to be put through every 3 years, thanks to the legal system that she was given life with parole? So every 3 years they're going to have to go through this and relive like the worst moment of their lives and beg a parole board not to let this psychopath out of prison. So just to go back to wrongful convictions, I mean, you have to think that the detectives have to be wrong for wrongful conviction. They do happen, but they're rare because the detectives would have to be wrong. The prosecutors would have to be wrong. 12 strangers on a jury would have to be wrong. Our appeals court, many appeals courts, depends on how far it goes, sometimes would have to be wrong. It's a lot of, right? So all those things, would have to go wrong. Everybody would have to be wrong for a wrongful conviction to occur. And what the Innocence Project wrongful conviction movement at all likes to do is likes to say that someone was convicted due to one piece of evidence. And they can debunk that one piece of evidence or make you question it, but they'll leave out the totality of the evidence. Right. So
guilty or innocent alike are not doing any of us any good. I think a lot of the people that I met in prison felt like it's not like they were sitting there in prison going, yep, I did a bad thing and I just have to serve my time and, earn the trust back of society. No, they were sitting there feeling victimized and feeling like they could not wait to get back out and make the same mistakes over and over again because a little bit fuck off. Like there was this feeling of, I'm not sitting here becoming a better person. I'm sitting here being victimized all over again. And the stories of
she's talking about herself. She said, my crime was a big F you to everyone. F you, society. I'm not going to live by your rules. I'm not going to be a better person. If I can get away with it again, I'll do it. Did a pretty good job of getting away with it the first time. I haven't been rehabilitated. You think I've been rehabilitated? F you. F you, guys. Joke's on you. And this guy's just eating it up with a spoon. She doesn't know. She's like, I've got a gullible dupe. And I'm playing him for all he's worth. I mean, isn't that fascinating, right? To watch. But I can go to, hold on, let's just take a little break and hold on one second. Let me pull this out. We'll get back to this. I just want to show you the prison guard, just kind of breeze through what she had to say about Amanda Knox, because I think it's really important that Amanda Knox is putting out her side of the story. I think that I guarded Amanda Knox for 2 years and she never talked about Meredith. She hasn't talked about Meredith yet in this interview. Sometimes in the Joe Rogan interview, she goes, why are they talking about me and not the victim? The victim. The victim. She's got a name, Meredith Kercher. She doesn't like to say Meredith Kercher's name. She never talked about Meredith or cried. She was like an ice queen. Prison guard Angela Antonelli reveals what Knox was really like in prison. Letters revealed she was obsessed with the Beatles. Does anybody remember? Hold on one second. I hate all these ads. Her All You Need Is Love, an appropriate t-shirt she wore to show up to court, but it was so Amanda Knox. It was like, here, see, this is what a non-criminal person would wear. They like the Beatles, right? They're into love. I'm not about murder. I'm about love. I wouldn't do a heinous crime like this. All you need is love, guys. Image management, something we were talking about when we were talking about Karen Reed. Letters reveal she was obsessed with the Beatles and dreamed of Obama. Someone very connected from Chicago, the center of the innocence fraud movement. No more innocence fraud than Chicago. Certainly Obama pushed that. He created a whole department in our government to look over convictions and make sure that they were reliable, and they found no gross injustices. They just found, I think there was like a couple cases where maybe an expert or two overclaimed either their expertise or how many times they testified, and they threw out those convictions. But as far as factual innocence, that's you can read it in the what is it called? The Innocence Audit. That book. Letters reveal she was obsessed with the Beatles and dreamed of Obama. Warder says Knox isolated herself from fellow prisoners. Didn't she just tell us she was very involved with fellow prisoners and even bought them cigarettes and taught them languages, English, etc.? That was her grift. Did you say grift or business? I can't remember exactly what word she used. It was composed and polished Amanda Knox, who last week appeared on primetime American television to publicize her long-awaited book. Gone was the wide-eyed exchange student who was first convicted, then acquitted, of murdering British student Meredith Kercher, replaced instead by a thoughtful young woman with a compelling story to tell of her suffering at the hands of the Italian justice system. Knox has been reportedly paid a £2.6 million advance for the book waiting to be heard, which will not be published in Britain. As the Mail on Sunday revealed 2 weeks ago, the book describes a hellish vision of her 4-year imprisonment in Italy, including a claim that she was harassed by a senior male warder. My guard wanted to know who I had sex with, how I like it, and if I do it with him. So, and she's like, shy me. I was so offended by this. This is the woman who admitted that she had relations with a stranger on a train going to Perugia. So with her sister there too. So I think he was a substance dealer, if I'm remembering correctly. So traumatic was her ordeal, she says, that as a young American girl out of her depth in a new and foreign culture, she was driven to the point of ending it all. My words, not theirs. Yet little, if anything, has been heard from those who spent time alongside her in Capone jail in the ancient university town of Perugia, where British student Meredith was killed until now. Prison guard Angela Antonelli saw Knox every day for 2 years and says she became closer to her than most. Antonelli paints an intriguing portrait of her, saying she survived behind bars with an almost astonishing degree of self-possession, bearing herself and writing letters, singing Beatles songs, and playing guitar. But it did not, she says, endear the young American to her fellow inmates, who took to calling her the Ice Queen. She never once cried when I was there, recalled the warder, speaking at her cluttered home in the city. I often spent the nights there and looked into her cell through the hole to check on her and the others. Other people asked for tranquilizers, cry, shout that they didn't do it, that they're in pain, that they can't go on. Why did this happen to me? They shout. Many prisoners bang their head against the walls or even sew up their mouths, scream, vomit. But she showed no reaction. The impression of extraordinary self-confidence and steadfastness is supported by fascinating correspondence seen by the Mail on Sunday, including one particular letter. In letters written to her former boyfriend, I was thinking of DJ, her boyfriend, to her former boyfriend and co-accused Raffaele Solicito, Knox shows something close to contempt for her accusers and the overwhelmingly hostile public opinion in Perugia. In one written a year after the murder, she writes, "The truth is in plain sight. They have nothing, only their twisted imaginations." See, we're going to beat the charges. It's not that we didn't do it. It's just that we didn't leave evidence that we did it. There's no mention of life in jail or other prisoners, or indeed of Meredith. A number of Knox's prison letters were intercepted by authorities in an attempt to gain some clue about the events leading up to the murder in 2007. This one, shown to the Mail on Sunday by Antonelli, has been among them. In prison, Knox kept to herself, says Antonelli, while the majority of prisoners were attempting to make some sort of communal life together. She declined to socialize, preferring the company of her daily journal. Other prisoners made cakes, biscuits, pizza, and always shared with their cellmates. Amanda ate what the others made, but never made anything herself, the warder said. Also, in prison, people borrow each other's clothes, but Amanda never shared her clothes nor accepted clothes. In my view, she behaved as though she were superior and looked down on the others. After finding herself alone in a foreign prison, Knox's caution is perhaps understandable, particularly as, before her acquittal, vicious media cover in Italy had branded her a devil whose alleged part in the murder was fueled by sex. I think they made too much of that. Never argued in court. But whether it's understandable or not, see, they're making excuses for it. They're like, well, it's understandable. She was a high... she couldn't eat their food. She couldn't befriend. She couldn't be friendly to her cellmates. No one's asking her to talk about her case, but whether it's understandable or not, Knox's reticence appears to have troubled those around her. Antonelli said she absolutely never spoke about that night with anyone. She would not talk about Meredith's murder. Amanda never once spoke about Meredith and never spoke about Guide. Rudy Guide was a drifter. He wasn't a drifter. He had grown up in the town, was well known in that town. From the Ivory Coast, who in a separate trial was convicted of Miss Kercher's murder and who remains in prison. So was Amanda Knox at one time, twice convicted. Even if Amanda, and so was Raph, even if Amanda didn't kill Meredith, she hadn't done anything to help people understand what happened that night. She thought about her own survival. She's impenetrable. You will never be able to understand what really happened that night. Amanda showed almost no emotions. The only time I saw her being nervous when she was waiting for her mother to send her the second Harry Potter book. She was really quite anxious. When is my book coming? She lived through her books, and she transported herself away through her books like her hero, Harry Potter. And they called her the actress. She played in the Christmas pageant. That's the thing I remember in this. She played the Madonna, the Virgin Mary, and they called her the actress. I'll try to post this in the community tab so you can read the rest, or else we'll never finish. I mean, we've been going for a while. It's gonna be another long one, guys. So pretty interesting in contrast. My father's alibi. Nice to see you. Thanks so much. In honor of the bully who was enraged by my last Roberta Glass super sticker. Okay, thank you. I don't even remember that one. Thanks so much. What happened there? Maybe Murder by Maestro will tell me. Funny. Okay. Appreciate it.
So many of the women, I was shocked. I mean, again, like I'm guilty of being someone who came from a place of seeing the world through a law and order lens because I didn't have access to the criminal justice system. I didn't know what the realities were like. And suddenly I found myself immersed in that world. And so many.
She didn't know. She had a party before she left for Perugia where people were throwing rocks, and she dealt with she was arrested for it, for that. She dealt with the criminal justice system with that. Raph too. Only one who didn't at the time was Rudy Gude. Have a record, have a conviction.
Many of the women that I was imprisoned with had been victims of crime long before they had ever committed crimes themselves. And so they were swimming in a world where crime was a part of the rhythm of life. And so was prison. And it was just like the indignity of it was, I feel like their sense of who they were and how they belonged to the rest of humanity was corrupted by a sense of victimization.
Right, and you hear like the classic response is, well, prison isn't supposed to be Club Med. But, I mean, you look at the statistics, the vast majority of people are getting out of prison at some point. Very few people are there for life. So the idea that we shouldn't care about even the people who did commit what they were sent away for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what is the point, right?
Well, there are so many. I would love to look at the amount of programs and charities there are for convicts and people in prison and people's in prison's children and families compared to the charities for actual victims' family members. Say they pale in number. I mean, to act like they have no support. And the reason that we don't have like these great rehabilitation programs, my understanding is that we tried all these programs and we were still having, people were still reoffending. I think it's at a 60 or 70% reoffending rate we have people. So there isn't an infinite amount of money to be spent on everything. I think that was an idea I had when I was young. Like, just, the government is like it's this endless well of money to spend on everything. But I mean, to say that we don't consider prisoners' feelings, all we do is consider convicts and offenders' feelings. I mean, there should have been such a public outcry when George Gascon got rid of the department that notified victims' families when their loved one's offender, i.e. murderer, came up for parole. And it was like an article, it was like a blip. Or the whole George Gascon, how do you say it? His whole plan that he put into effect, where he had all these former defense attorneys run for district attorney all over the country so that their sole interest would no longer be with prosecuting people, but not prosecuting people and getting people out of prison. I mean, it would be a huge scandal if we got a bunch of prosecutors to work as defense attorneys and work against their client's best interest. We never hear the end of it.
Right. And I think that, some people might argue that vengeance is the point. It's just the point of justice is to make people suffer who made other people suffer. And that's the point. And that's the goal. And if that's the goal, if that's what you really think is what justice is and what our society needs, then sure, we're doing it right. But but if what you want is a society that is safer, that is attempting to address.
Right. You also really have to look at these statistics and look exactly at what they're looking at. Because I heard someone quote a statistic like about, speaking of the Riley case that just ended. You're saying that these illegal immigrants are more law-abiding and have a conviction rate less than, And it was like from 2012 to 2018. And it's not saying, it wasn't like current with the new mass, with the new incredible amount of illegal immigrants. So you have to really look at what sometimes they were deported before they could get convicted. So then that didn't count. You have to look at all these numbers can be manipulated. And as Murder by Maestro was just pointing out in the chat, Josh Dubin, the Innocence Project ambassador, and Charlie Adelson's jury consultant was saying that after 20 years, there's only a 1% reoffender rate. But does that mean of the same crime? So if they're in there for something like a felony, or do they have to be convicted? Is it they're charged with? Obviously, I assume that doesn't mean people who violate their parole. I don't know. I mean, it's so vague. You don't know what they're talking about. So it's like, because they're on this big push to cap all prison sentences at 20 years. So people like Susan Smith would have been out 10 years ago for everyone. And it goes so against our justice system that's so careful. The sentence you get is so carefully considered to every detail of the crime and to every mitigating factor. It's like
address, the causes of crime in the first place, and is attempting to try to mitigate circumstances that might lead to crimes, that might lead to further victimizations of innocent people in the future, then you have to sort of take a step back from that righteous indignation you feel towards a person who committed a crime and instead say, what is it that works? And what we're doing right now is not working.
Right. So for people who aren't super familiar with your...
Right. So speaking of not working, now that they're one of the things that I did 7 or 8 episodes with the National Organization of Victims of Juvenile Murderers was talking about how both Republicans and Democrats are passing laws giving juvenile lifers, so a juvenile like basically a teen killer who was given life without parole, giving them an option, a path to parole. So the same thing that Susan Smith's family, the Smith family is doing, is every 3 years having to come up to these parole hearings and never knowing when they're getting out. It's like endless anxiety and re-victimization. So they're passing these laws capping, if you're given life as life without parole as a juvenile, it means what you did is so heinous, so over the top. It sounds good on the surface. You think, well, they're juvenile. That's an awful lot of time, blah, blah, blah. But if you are given life without parole, that means what you did is so serious, so heinous. It's not handed out lightly. And they're undoing that all over the country. They're passing these laws to give pathways. The other thing they're doing is that they're redefining a juvenile crime as up to 26 years old, with the idea that your brain isn't developed. Strangely, I mean, if that's true, then why don't we move the age of consent to 26 years? If your brain isn't fully developed. You see how it's like, it's just put where it's carefully placed, where they want it. They want as many of these people out as possible. And they don't work. So one of the reasons why it was such a red wave all over the country is because these soft on crime policies didn't work. And the people they hurt the most are poor people, minority communities who live in high crime areas. Who the people lawmakers who are pushing these laws say they care about the most. So it's so perverse.
Case. Essentially, the Italian government accused you of conspiring with your boyfriend of 1 week and a man who you'd met one time in some bizarre sex game to kill your study abroad roommate at the time.
Right.
But the evidence, and for the people watching the video, I put evidence.
Right. We don't know that she only met him one time. She said that, you can go back to, I think I did an episode, Amanda Knox hardly knows Rudy Goudet. She met him. She knew him. She knew him several times. As far as knowing Raph, only dating him for a week, my theory is that when two psychopaths meet, it's on very quickly. They finally found their soulmate, someone with their own interests. Look at Carla Homolka, right? And Paul Bernardo. Look how quickly that ignited. It ignites very quickly between them.
In air quotes. It was always extremely spurious, mishandled DNA evidence, law enforcement lying under oath, and most importantly, a highly coerced confession.
Yes.
Oh, she's just in heaven. This guy is just repeating these talking points. How do you get like this? How do you get so uncurious? How do you go to the Amanda Knox documentary or website and just believe wholeheartedly? How do you get this naive that you're getting the whole story? I mean, is he willfully putting this out? Does he know that what he's saying is nonsense? That's my question. Or does he actually believe this? Is he doesn't care because he wants an interview with Amanda Knox and he knows that to get this kind of interview, she's not going to come on my show and talk about her crime with anyone who knows anything about it. So Amanda, tell me about the mixed DNA that lit up under luminol in the room of the stage break-in. Well, how did your blood get mixed with Meredith's blood in that room? Isn't it curious? Why were you and Meredith bleeding at the same time? He's never going to answer those kind of questions. But does this guy really believe it? That's what I want to know. Or is he just an innocence fraudster who knows she's probably did it and loves just repeating these talking points? Because, I mean, he's going above and beyond. I've never heard the authorities lying under oath. I've never heard that. Mishandled DNA, that's always talked about in that they took them a while to put the bra clasp into evidence. But when they did that, it came up with Raph's DNA. Why would Raph's DNA be around Meredith's room if he wasn't, why would it be in that one spot on the bra hook? I mean, that's a little odd for contamination. Why would he be going through her things when they said they found the door locked?
Where you implicated your boss at the time after, an incredibly stressful several days where you were screamed at for hours in a language you did not speak fluently. You were slapped several times. And at one point you got your period during the interrogation.
Oh my gosh, these are new ones. I've never heard the period defense before. Slapped. How she got a civil suit? Everybody denies that this ever happened. And the interrogation, she was there. She wasn't asked to be there. She came with Raph. And they said, Amanda, go home, get some sleep. We don't need you. And she's like, no, I want to stay and support my boyfriend. She wanted to stay close so she could have her influence. Because when Raph finally broke, he said, oh, Amanda Knox told me to tell a pile of lies and pulled his alibi. So she wanted to be close by so he didn't, tell the real truth, confess, etc. So they asked her to come in and see if she could think of anyone who might have been in the villa or someone who might have done this. And within an hour and a half, she blamed her boss once the alibi was pulled. Soon as they said, Raph's pulled your alibi, that's when she started saying, it's him, shaking her head and getting dramatic. Also, when she was shown a drawer of knives, she also had another freak out, putting her hands over her ears and shaking her head and freaking out.
And you weren't allowed to use the restroom. What do people not understand about what effect?
What do people not understand about actually doing your research and not swallowing a pile of BS like that. So they said, do you want something to eat? Offered her tea, snacks from the from the machine, the snack machine downstairs. That was the beginning of her brutal interrogation. And no one asked her to remember anything. They just asked what happened and the truth. She blamed Patrick Lumumba and has never apologized. What's stopping her from apologizing and paying him back the money she owes him?
That has on the mind.
It's the biggest obstacle I feel to justice in so many of these wrongful convictions cases, because coercive interrogations and what happens behind closed doors in police stations with authority figures who are hell-bent on getting what they want out of witnesses or suspects alike. That side of the criminal justice system is very dark and very scary. And I think that a lot of people like to think that if they were in my shoes, nothing short of being beaten with a rubber hose or threatened with, by being dangled out a window, would get them to implicate themselves or others in a crime that they knew that they were innocent of. And obviously the evidence, the facts, the research speaks otherwise. But speaking from personal experience, I can tell you that I have never been put in a position of doubting my own sanity like I was in the hands of those police officers. It was not just that I was scared or that I was yelled at or that I was hit. I was made to believe that I had repressed all memories of.
And coincidentally, what a coincidence that she blames her boss for no reason at all, and that her DNA is found on the hitch of the knife and Meredith's on the blade, in addition to all the other places it is. But guys, that's unreliable. The only reliable DNA is the same, is the one that is Rudy's. That's the only reliable forensic evidence. Anything that implicates Raph or Amanda is corrupted, wrong. But all the evidence that implicates Rudy is absolutely 100% correct. Isn't that amazing? Because guys, he's black, right? She's white and he's black. Did you guys get that? So gross. The racism and the, it's not even subtle in this. I'm not one to cry racism, but in this case, if Amanda Knox supporters are so blatantly racist, it's disgusting. Because of course the black guy did it. He was the one drifter, because he lived somewhere else. It's like if you've lived two places in your life, you could be called a drifter, guys. Oh, you lived in Cincinnati and New York? Well, it's a drifter. You grew up in Perugia and were known in that town very well, family known. You're a drifter. Oh, God. Bless America. It's hard to take. But I do believe that this was the first time that Amanda Knox had really been questioned like this and not believed. She'd always manipulated, lied, got over, wore her public mask very well, her public persona very well so that she wasn't questioned. And I think she was shocked because the read technique, instead of saying, oh, you say you didn't do it? They say, no, we don't believe you. Your story isn't making sense. And they're trying to get rid of this read technique, which is just basic. I don't think there's anything coercive about it. But people like Amanda Knox will point to taped interviews. I hate to go back to the Central Park Five again, where 4 out of the 5 confessed on tape. The 5th, JenTheRN, made spontaneous admissions, but he didn't formally confess with like a guardian or a parent in a taped interview. But I mean, look at those, they'll call those coerced. So they've gone from the idea of a false confession, like a rare thing that happens, to the idea that like a group of people all accused of being involved in the crime will confess, and all confess in ways that are consistent and support each other's confession somehow, unbeknownst to the other person. I mean, so over the top. All right. I don't want to, what are we at? We're at 2 hours. May take a little break, but I do want to get through a little bit more of this. I hope you guys aren't
witnessed
bored.
a traumatic event, but that now I was being forced to unearth repressed memories, or else I would never see my family again. I was put in an impossible position where they reshaped my understanding of reality through lies and through manipulation, so that I felt like there was no possible answer besides the one that they eventually coerced me into signing on to, which was that I had witnessed my boss commit a horrific crime, and I was so traumatized by it that I could not even remember it. That was the story that they wanted me to tell, and it was all based upon a text message that my boss had sent me the night of the murder. And that,
Right. He said, we don't need you. And she said, see you later. But that has nothing to do with her spontaneously yelling, it was him, it was him. Ironically, isn't it strange that they wanted her to tell a story that totally protected her from any involvement in this case? She knew he did it, but she couldn't remember any details. And strangely, they didn't believe her that she had spontaneous amnesia. They wanted her to have spontaneous amnesia because people with amnesia are the best witnesses, guys. We all know that. That's the story they wanted her to tell. Wow, she's just flying by the seat of her pants here.
that was it. And once they had it, they latched onto it. I think they were under a lot of pressure to come up with answers. And because there is this like psychological resistance to appreciating psychological coercion and psychological torture, there was a resistance to them once the evidence was at hand, and they saw that it was, oh, this guy who has a long history of breaking and entering, his DNA is all over the crime scene. Maybe that's the guy who did it. They held on to this idea that, well, Amanda confessed, so she must have witnessed something. She must have been there. Maybe she got them confused, or maybe she's a mastermind and she's cunningly subbing in one person for another. Like, there was a complete resistance to the idea that, oh no, they had just gaslit a 20-year-old girl into not even knowing what was the truth or not anymore. And I think that is a resistance that you see to this day. I mean, if you followed my case, you know that like I still remain wrongly convicted of a lesser charge, which is slander. I was, after I signed those statements, and it turned out that my boss,
you know my case, I'm still wrongfully convicted of slander. It bothers the heck out of her. She's wrongfully convicted of slander, guys. Wrongfully convicted. Supreme Court affirmed her conviction. That's the Supreme Court that exonerated her, with that great exoneration. She was there at the scene of the crime. She's washing Meredith off her hands. Oh my gosh. I'm still, even after throwing out some evidence, I couldn't clear myself because I so blatantly slandered my boss for no reason. Even with all the pressure of America it was illegal. Like what the Supreme Court is supposed to do is just supposed to look at all the evidence, the evidence that was established in the lower courts and make sure that, either affirm or toss it. But they did something different in Amanda and Raf's case. They just tossed all the forensic evidence. Somehow it's totally reliable when it comes to Rudy, but not with them, under the pressure from America, and let her go with a damning decision. And I really thought she was going to get out. I couldn't even follow the slander case when it was going on because I was sure that once again, that same pressure would be on. But Italy was like, no, thanks. We already folded under pressure once. This slander thing, it's gonna stay. Sorry, America. It's gonna stay. She's a convicted liar. And this guy is eating up everything she says. I mean, absurd.
Obviously was completely innocent and had nothing to do with this crime. He had an ironclad alibi. Even after I retracted those statements, I was accused of having maliciously and intentionally.
She never formally retracted the statements. He got himself out on his own before that. 2 weeks. But it did ruin his business and put tremendous stress on his family. And for 2 weeks, people thought he was a killer and did this terrible thing. Crime, heinous crime.
Intentionally slandered him in order to divert the course of justice. And I was found guilty of that crime. And I was sentenced to 3 years in prison for that crime. And technically in Italy, they say that I served rightfully 3 years in prison for the outcome of that interrogation.
Isn't that beautiful? You did serve 3 years in prison rightfully, Amanda. You're a liar. You're a convicted liar. And you can't get out of it. Sorry.
And I'm still fighting that to this day.
And I wanted to ask you about that. So that was the most recent development.
How can you fight it? There's nowhere to fight it. There's nothing. I mean, you can try to appeal it, but there's nowhere to go. Even your lawyer was like, yeah, I have to look at the decision, but I don't know. There's not a lot of options, not a lot of avenues we can go with this.
In this case, you went back over the summer. You were reconvicted.
Mm-hmm.
Why go back? Why fight it?
Well, maybe this is just my personality, but I really do believe in confronting the things that scare you if you believe in yourself and you believe in doing the right thing. Like
She didn't show up. She didn't show up after she was let go before the final Court of Cassation that let her go with that damning decision. She did not show up. She did not give evidence, and she said, I'm not, and she sent a ridiculous letter instead. She didn't show up to that. The reason she showed up to the slander thing is A, she loves attention, and B, she was sure she was going to win. So was I. I was sure she was going to bamboozle the courts because they had changed the laws so that they had thrown out. She got a lot of evidence against her, really damning evidence against her thrown out. But she had slandered this guy so much that it still convicted her. She wasn't ready for that. She was walking around like Miss America. Does anybody remember? Hold on 1 second. Does anybody remember? Like just look at the beginning of this. Hold on 1 second. I mean, full outfit picked out with her husband in tow, dressed to the nines, ready to have her moment in the sun and talk about how she was wrongfully convicted and how mean everyone was to her and how unjust this slander conviction was and how great wrong had been righted, etc. I'm just going to play a little bit of the opening again.
A shocking verdict for Amanda Knox.
Amanda is very upset. We're very surprised of the outcome of the decision.
Now reconvicted of slander for accusing an innocent man in her roommate's murder in Italy in 2007. Knox, who was 20 years old at the time, was arrested along with her then boyfriend for the death of Meredith Kercher.
Okay. So it looks like almost like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz outfit with their glasses on her head. She totally was shocked by that. All right, I'm going to play 5 more minutes and then I'm going to call it. We've been going a while and it is rather repetitive. I think we've lost most of the audience. It's like, I can't take any more of this Amanda Knox stuff.
I'm not a confrontational person, but I believe in confronting difficult things. I'm not someone who runs away. And so as I have fought this case, I felt that showing up to a court of appeals who was going to retry me on this case, because the European Court of Human Rights had ruled against Italy and said that my human rights had been violated, that I never should have been convicted of this crime. And that was enough for the Italian Supreme Court to reconsider that conviction and overturn it back in 2023. But they overturned it and sent it back for retrial. So I felt that in light of this new development, this was an opportunity for me to speak directly to the people who would judge me about the realities of these interrogations and this experience of psychological coercion. My fear was that because it's such a misunderstood phenomenon, that people would not know how to interpret my behavior or my experience. And so I felt like there was no better way for me to address that than by showing up and showing that I had nothing to hide and I could explain myself. I did that, and unfortunately, it didn't go my way, but I am appealing that conviction to the Supreme Court. And actually, just today, my attorneys filed the paperwork for it.
What is it like?
Oh, so it's not the Supreme Court. My apologies. I thought it was the Supreme Court that made that decision. Or maybe they're appealing the Supreme Court's decision there. Can you do that? I mean, it seems like you have endless appeals. All right. I think we've done it. Thanks, Lorena, not Bobbitt. I'll check that out. I'm sure Kevin is doing in the brave way he always does when he pulls my name through the mud. Doing it with just subscriber mode on, so no one who's skeptical of his ridiculous slander can say anything. All right, that's what I have for today. We're going to go through it. I'm sure there's lots more, but Amanda Knox has PR training. She hammers home her points. It is repetitive. The closest thing that you're going to get to a tough interview with Amanda Knox was done by Chris Cuomo. And he said, why did this prosecutor say that you were the one to actually end Meredith's life? You were the one. He put the murder weapon in your hand. You were the one to do it. And Amanda answers, well, she sort of moves her eyes sideways and says, well, I can't really speculate on the judge's motivations. Meaning like they'd have some other motivations, like some kind of how personal that they just want to, that this prosecutor would want to accuse her of murder wrongfully with no evidence. All right, I'm going to go out. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this episode. It really helps the channel. This is always a small channel. Please help me get the word out about innocence fraud and victims' rights is so important. I think we just really need a kind of better true crime reporting. Have a great night, everyone. I'm going to end with my new song for Amanda Knox. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern.
I'm gonna want you to forget. She plunges the knife until Meredith's neck. The double DNA knife we won't forget. Spun cartwheels and then splits at the police station. Couldn't hide your elation. Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you never Perugia will chase you out of town with pitchforks and torches. Like the monster you are, get out crosses and garlic and watch how your skin scorches. We will never forget how you staged a burglary, covered your ears to block out Meredith's screams, mixed blood of you and Meredith all over the crime scene. Keep saying Rudy did it alone, but we are wise to your scheme. Amanda Knox is a convicted liar. You can't produce your own Hulu flick. Innocence Farm documentary, remember Earl's oldest trick. The Court of Cassation said you were there at the scene of the crime. Wash Meredith blood off your hands and Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you blamed your employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi.
Murder made her rich. She's a psycho, a flawed and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with a plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off the crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. And pays.
The city of Perugia will chase you out of town with pitchforks and torches. Like the monster you are, get out crosses and garlic and watch how your skin scorches. We will never forget how you staged a burglary, covered your ears to block out Meredith's screams, mixed blood of you and Meredith all over the crime scene. Keep saying Rudy did it alone, but we are wise to your scheme. Amanda Knox is a convicted liar. You can't produce your own Hulu flick. Innocence Farm documentary, remember Earl's oldest trick. The Court of Cassation said you were there at the scene of the crime. Wash Meredith blood off your hands and Daddy got you a PR team before he hired a lawyer. When your alibi fell apart, you blamed your employer. Let him rot in jail until he got out with an alibi.
Murder made her rich. She's a psycho, a flawed and a selfish bitch. She stole Meredith's life with a plunge of a blade. Never stops profiting off her crime. Murder pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays. And pays and pays and pays.